going on, guys? It's your boy the Markham Knight here. Today's video is going to be all about the Restore the Snyderverse hashtag and the Fire James Gunn hashtag. Now let's get right into the conversation about the Snyderverse. Guys, the Snyderverse failed, and it failed miserably. If you look at Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Justice League, these were three movies that did very, very poorly. They did poorly financially, they did poorly with critics, and they did poorly with fans. So let's get into it in a little more detail. Man of Steel, which was the first Superman movie, which came out right after the Dark Knight trilogy, so they had a lot of momentum going over at Warner Brothers and DC with the Dark Knight trilogy, but Man of Steel did just $668 million. Now I'm going to put that number into perspective for you later, but I do want to get into the other details first. It also did only 56% for critics on Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes is an aggregate. It's not just one person's score. It is an aggregate. That means 56% of people gave this thing a positive rating. 56% is not very high. Now, although it did better with fans at 75%, that 75% is not exemplary. It is not that good because if you look at how many people went to watch it, at only 668 million, that's not that many people, considering Man of Steel cost $225 million in just the production budget. That doesn't include marketing or any other costs. So that movie was not very profitable. Then you look at Batman v Superman. Batman v Superman did $873 million. Now, some of you might think that's good, but this is literally the first movie where Superman and Batman are on screen together. It's the first movie where Wonder Woman's on screen, period. And it's also included Doomsday in the movie and the death of Superman. So there was a lot going on in that movie for that movie to do well. They literally named that movie Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. So you included Batman's name to get people to watch it. You included Superman's name to get people to watch it. And you included Justice, which is kind of hinting the Justice League. So this was set up for pure marketing to try and get as many people to watch it as possible. And it did very poorly. Now, if we talk about the critic rating, we shouldn't even really talk about it. It did just 29% on Rotten Tomatoes. Again, that's an aggregate score. That means 29% of people liked it. And then out of the fans, only 63% of people liked that movie. 63% is not a good fan base to have. That is not a good percentage of people who watched that movie and did not enjoy it. There is a lot of them. That's about 37% of people who watched that movie and gave it a thumbs down, which is not good at all. Then you move on to Justice League. Now, I'll talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League after, but let's talk about Justice League first. The Justice League movie did very poorly financially. It's actually the lowest of the three at $658 million, and then it also did 39% on critics for Rotten Tomatoes. That means 39% of people liked it. That means over 60% of people did not like that movie, and that's for critics, obviously. But then you go to the fan vote, and that was 68% of people who actually watched this movie and liked it. And those aren't inflated numbers because those numbers actually have a verified audience rating. That means people couldn't vote more than once. You had to have a ticket from Fandango or something like that to prove that you actually watched that movie. Whereas the first two movies, you can have people voting multiple times. So those numbers are not inflated. Now, for as poorly as Justice League the movie did, it actually did better than Batman v Superman with the fans and with the critics. That says a lot, because that movie was a train wreck. It was kind of mashed together. And now we can talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League. Although the movie was received well, both by critics, it was positive at 71%, which is pretty good. That's a solid rating. And then also the fans loved it. It was at 94%. But again, remember, there are a lot of people making multiple accounts and stuff to vote over and over again to make sure that rating's as high as possible. However, I did enjoy that movie, and it was a good movie. There was no way you were going to get a 4-hour Justice League movie in theaters. It just wasn't going to happen. So if they calmed that movie down up until 2 hours or 2.5 hours, like the Justice League movie was, it would have been very, very disjointed, and you would have had a lot of people not liking the movie nearly as much as they did watching it on HBO Max, where you can pause it as many times as you want. So let's talk about why I don't want to count the Zack Snyder's Justice League movie. Because on HBO Max, within the first week, Zack Snyder's Justice League had 2.2 million viewers. 2.2 million viewers in the first week is kind of the equivalent of 22 million or less, $22 million in a first week. 22 million. To put that into perspective, Batman v Superman made 425 million in its first weekend, not even first week. So obviously the number of people who watched it were significantly lower. So anytime I'm going to use these numbers, I'm going to use the Justice League movie and not Zack Snyder's Justice League because not that many people watched it. And again, you can overinflate those numbers because that number of 2.2 million, that doesn't include repeat views from people. I personally watched that movie 3-4 times within the first week, and I showed it to other people also, allowing them to use my account. So let's move on to the next conversation, away from the Snyderverse, which did not do well. And if you look at what Snyder wanted to do in the future, he wanted to go back to evil Superman. He wanted Superman to lose Lois. He wanted Lois and Batman to have a baby together while Superman was dead. There was a whole bunch of convoluted storylines that he had going. Although there were some cool things in it, like Darkseid, which I did like. I didn't want more evil Superman. Henry Cavill was screwed over enough with his portrayal of Superman because he never got to play him happy and optimistic and play a real Superman role. Man of Steel was a good start, but then they just veered completely off in a different direction. So I did not want the Snyderverse to continue. I do not want to restore the Snyderverse. I want to kill the Snyderverse. The Snyderverse is over. Let's just move on from that. But let's get into the Fire James Gunn conversation. James Gunn he's a great director. He's done a lot of very good movies. And even the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, although not enough people watched it, they were very good. So obviously if you give that the kind of attention that something like Batman and Superman and these kind of characters get, you know it's going to be well received by people. And there are going to be a lot more people open to watching those kind of movies. Both of those, the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, are rated R, so you couldn't get a lot of kids and stuff into it, but obviously they're not going to be making these movies like that. If we're talking about in terms of just director versus director, James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy is more successful than Zack Snyder's entire trilogy. Zack Snyder's trilogy consisted of Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Justice League. And those three movies are going to do much more poorly than the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 made a combined 1.637 billion, not million. $1.673 billion compared to Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, which were the most profitable of the three movies anyway, making only 1.541. So you're talking about a group of misfits that nobody has ever heard of outside of us comic book fans, making way more money than Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman in the entire movies together. That is unheard of. That's crazy. So if James Gunn can do that with Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm sure he can do great with an entire universe at his disposal. And this is someone who said he's a huge DC fan, who has read DC Comics, and you can tell he's read DC Comics. He gets really into the lore in his movies and stuff like that from way back in the day. So obviously, I think you should just give him a chance. You should give him a chance. Peter Safran's just a producer. He obviously doesn't have as much say in the creative aspect of it, but James Gunn is a great director, and having his mind... If you think about it, Kevin Feige was grooming James Gunn to take over the space aspect of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he knew his knowledge was up there with anybody, and he wanted him to take that over before the tweets and stuff came out earlier. But James Gunn taking over DC is potentially the best thing to ever happen to DC. Now let's talk about Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill getting dropped sucks. It sucks bad. I really like Henry Cavill, but I'm a logical and reasonable person. Henry Cavill is 39 years old, and he didn't get a fresh take at Superman, and that's 99% because of Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder said he was the one who proposed Batman in the movie, not anyone else. You can look at his interviews, he proposed Batman in the sequel, not anyone. So Batman v Superman was a Zack Snyder production. That is what he wanted to do. He wanted to have Superman angsty and stuff in Batman v Superman and questioning whether or not he should exist. And that's a big move by Zack Snyder, and I don't think it paid off because we didn't really get to see Superman become Superman. Man of Steel was a very good start. I love that movie. Very good start. But we didn't get to see him ever become Superman. He didn't become Superman in Man of Steel. He didn't become Superman in Batman v Superman, and he wasn't Superman in the Justice League movie. Maybe right at the end, you see him happy and you see him being hopeful again, but you don't get to see it enough. We haven't seen that Superman yet, and if Zack Snyder got to continue his vision, we'd see evil Superman. So we wouldn't even see Superman until the end of 5 movies. That's 2 more Justice League movies that Zack Snyder wanted to do before we get to see Henry Cavill's Superman actually be Superman. And you guys want to restore the Snyderverse. So Henry Cavill got a bad shake, I agree. With that being said, a fresh take is exactly what DC needs. Because nobody associates anything good with the previous DC regime. Wonder Woman had a lot of good things going for it, and then Wonder Woman 2 happened, and that sent everything into the toilet. Wonder Woman 2 was a bad movie. I did not like that movie. I gave that movie like a 5 out of 10. It was really, really bad. And that got any good thing going for Gal Gadot to go down the window, same with Patty Jenkins. And both of them kind of lost any credit they had. Aquaman did amazingly in theaters and stuff like that, but it wasn't as well received by fans and critics as people would like it, but it made over $1 billion. And that's literally the only good thing that DC has going for it. Shazam did pretty well, but it didn't do well financially. Like I said, the Snyderverse did not do well. And the associations people make with these DC movies are not positive. Most of them are not positive. So starting over and going in a new direction is the best idea in my personal opinion. And I think if you guys give it a chance, and if the first, let's say 3-4 movies, because they only have a 4-year contract, and that's already started as of this year. As of this December, that 4-year contract has started. So because that 4-year contract has started, they're going to have a 4-year span to win us fans over. Now, I'm willing to give them those 4 years to try and do it. I gave Zack Snyder from 2013 until now, and it was not a good experience. I loved some parts of it, I hated a lot of parts of it. Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor is the worst thing I have seen on screen, maybe ever. It was really, really bad. It was a cartoon character, and we all gave Zack Snyder the benefit of the doubt. So let's do the same for James Gunn. Anyways guys, you stuck around this long, tell me what you think.
This is the Markham Knight, and I need you to like, comment, and subscribe.